The Pacific dawn came slowly over Oceanside Harbor, brushing pale gold across the hulls of moored fishing boats. Salt air, old diesel, and the rhythmic slap of water against wood made a kind of quiet music that only men who lived by it could hear. Cole Bennett had listened to it every morning for 7 years. His hands calloused, scarred, and steady moved across a weather-worn trawler with the same precision a surgeon might use, patching the cracked fiberglass, checking the lines, never rushing a single motion. The townsfolk said he was the kind of man who could fix anything except maybe himself. A coffee thermos sat beside the toolbox. He hadn't touched it yet. Instead, he watched gulls circle over the breakwater, his gray-flecked hair stirring in the chill wind. From a distance, he looked like any working man. Flannel shirt, worn jeans, boots stained by years of tide and oil. Up close, though, there was something in his posture, a certain vigilance. The way his eyes scanned movement before his mind even registered it that didn't belong to the harbor. "Dad?" Maya's voice broke the morning stillness. She walked toward him, balancing 2 paper cups from the pier cafe. 16, sharp as the winter light, her cello case slung over one shoulder. She handed him a cup. "You left before breakfast again." "Couldn't sleep," Cole said, taking it with a small nod. "The Callahan boat's behind schedule." She leaned against a piling, sipping quietly. Between them stretched a kind of easy silence familiar to people who didn't need many words. "I need you to sign something," she said finally, pulling a folded permission slip from her backpack. "Field trip next week. We're performing at the Navy base in Coronado. They said parents can chaperone if they want." Cole's hand paused over the paper for half a beat, just enough for Maya to notice. "What's the event?" "Some ceremony for returning SEAL teams," she said. "Our orchestra plays between speeches. It might help us raise money for the music program." The word SEAL hung in the air like a sudden change in pressure. Cole kept his expression neutral, but the faint twitch of his jaw betrayed something else. "Sounds like a big deal," he said, signing quickly and passing the paper back. "You could come," Maya offered. "You never come to school things. I've got boats to fix." She studied him for a moment. "You always say that when it's anything military. You cross the street when the parades come through." "I don't like crowds," he said simply. It wasn't a lie, but it wasn't the truth either. She sighed, swung her cello case over her shoulder, and started back toward the road. "Principal Finch says Admiral Hargrove's going to be there. You know him?" Cole's answer was too quick. No. When she was gone, the harbor noise seemed to fade. He stood still, coffee cooling in his hand, eyes fixed on the far-off Navy ships gleaming under the morning Sunday. Somewhere inside him, muscles long unused, tightened with memory. 10 years had passed since he'd heard that name spoken aloud. He went back to work, but his movements had lost their rhythm. Every scrape of sandpaper, every creak of wood, seemed to echo from another life, a life buried beneath silence and salt. And yet, even as he tried to lose himself in labor, one thought kept circling like a gull that wouldn't leave. If Admiral Victor Hargrove was coming to Coronado, then the past he'd spent a decade burying was already walking toward him. The week passed faster than Cole expected, each day pulling him closer to the one place he had sworn never to set foot in again. The morning of the meeting at Maya's school arrived gray and cool, the kind of California day that hinted at rain but never quite delivered. The gymnasium smelled of floor polish and old banners. Parents gathered in folding chairs, murmuring anxiously as Principal Finch clicked through a PowerPoint about budget cuts. The orchestra, it turned out, was on the chopping block unless they could raise $10,000 before the semester ended. Cole sat in the back, arms folded. He didn't care for meetings, but Maya had begged him to come. "This partnership with the Navy could save the program," Finch said brightly, his bow tie slightly crooked. "We've been invited to perform at a ceremony honoring returning SEAL teams. Many high-ranking officers will attend, Admiral Victor Hargrove among them." The name hit Cole like a physical blow. He felt the air leave his lungs but kept his face neutral. Finch's voice kept droning, but Cole no longer heard the words. He was back in the desert for a heartbeat, the heat, the dust, the sound of distant explosions. He blinked, and it was gone. When the meeting ended, parents swarmed the principal, offering to bake cookies or organize rides. Cole slipped quietly toward the exit, hoping to disappear before anyone noticed. "Mr. Bennett," a voice called behind him. He turned to see Elise Grant balancing a stack of sheet music against her hip. She was the town librarian, mid-40s, with soft eyes that saw more than people realized. "Didn't expect to see you here," she said, falling into step beside him. Maya insisted. "She's good, the best cellist I've ever heard." Cole allowed himself a faint smile. Her mother started her young. Elise nodded. "Sarah was a remarkable woman. You've done well keeping that spark alive." They walked in silence for a few moments before she added, "You know, the Navy base ceremony could be good for Maya. Scholarships, connections." Cole stopped, studying her. "You think I should go?" "I think you already decided not to," she said gently. "You've avoided every Veterans Day parade since you moved here. You cross the street when Commander Adler comes down Main." Cole's expression hardened. "I have my reasons." "I'm sure you do." Elise's tone was calm, but her gaze was steady. "My brother served 3 tours. I recognize the habits, the way you always sit facing the door, how you scan the street before crossing. You were military once, weren't you?" "Long time ago," he said quietly. "Doesn't matter now." "It matters to Maya," Elise replied. "She deserves to know the man her father really is." He didn't answer. By the time he reached the parking lot, the conversation had lodged under his skin like a splinter. That night he couldn't sleep. Around midnight, he rose, crossed the creaking floorboards, and opened the old closet at the back of his room. He reached up to the top shelf and brought down a small metal box, its surface coated with a film of dust. He placed it on the bed. For a long time he simply stared. Inside lay the fragments of a life erased, a folded flag, a photograph with blurred faces, a coin etched with Arabic script. He picked up the coin, rubbed it between his fingers, and felt its cold weight drag memories to the surface, the mission that should have been aborted, the men who didn't come home, and the one voice over the radio that still haunted his dreams. "Abort, Iron Ghost. That's an order." And his own reply, "Negative. Civilians inside." When dawn came, the decision was already made. At breakfast, Maya stopped in the doorway, surprised to find him at the stove. "You're cooking?" she asked. "Looks like it." "You okay?" "Fine," he said, setting a plate of eggs in front of her. "Eat. We'll be late." "Late for what?" "School. I need to talk to Principal Finch." Her eyes widened. "You're coming to the field trip?" He nodded once. "Figured the orchestra could use another chaperone." Maya grinned, her whole face lighting up. "What changed your mind?" "You did." The following afternoon, he joined the orchestra rehearsal to review safety procedures for the base visit. He stood at the front of the room, posture unconsciously straight, voice clipped and steady. "You'll need ID at the gate," he told the teenagers. "Follow directions immediately, don't wander off the assigned path." The students nodded, a little intimidated. Elise watched from the doorway, amused. When rehearsal ended, she walked up to him. "That was quite the briefing," she said. "You sure you've never led troops before?" "Just trying to keep them safe." Her smile softened. "You seem different today." He shrugged. "Maybe I'm just tired of running." As the students packed up their instruments, Maya came over, eyes bright. "Dad, the base is huge. They said the ceremony's in Hangar 4. Can we see the ships?" "Probably not," Cole said automatically, then caught himself. She frowned. "How do you know it's Hangar 4? They didn't tell us that." He paused, then smiled faintly. Must have heard it somewhere. That night, when the harbor lights shimmered over the water, Cole stood outside the workshop, watching the moon break across the waves. Somewhere out there, past the horizon, lay everything he'd tried to forget. But tomorrow, the past would have a face again. Admiral Victor Hargroves and Cole Bennett, the man who'd built his life out of silence, would have to decide whether to stay invisible or stand up and speak. The day of the ceremony dawned clear and cold, the kind of California morning when the sea air stung just enough to remind you that life was still sharp. Cole drove Maya and her cello to Coronado Base in a borrowed van, the harbor fading behind them in the rearview mirror. She sat quietly beside him, fingers tracing the edge of her music folder. "You nervous?" he asked. "A little," she admitted. "It's not every day you play for Navy commanders." "You'll be fine," he said. "Just remember what your mother used to tell you, play like the world's listening, even if it's not." That made her smile. But when they reached the checkpoint at the base, her father's demeanor shifted. He straightened unconsciously, his movements precise. The guard at the gate scanned their IDs, pausing just long enough for Cole to notice, then waved them through. Maya looked out the window. "You've been here before, haven't you?" He didn't answer. Hangar 4 had been transformed into something between a ceremony and a spectacle. Rows of folding chairs stretched toward a stage draped in deep navy cloth, the stars and stripes hanging perfectly centered behind the podium. SEALs in dress uniforms mingled with civilians in suits and cocktail dresses. The air smelled faintly of polished brass and coffee. Cole guided the students to the far side of the hangar, away from the stage. "Stay together," he said. "Follow directions, no wandering." The teens nodded, sensing a kind of authority in his tone that didn't come from any school chaperone manual. While the orchestra tuned up, Cole scanned the crowd. His gaze passed over ribbons, medals, name tags, and then stopped. Admiral Victor Hargrove stood near the stage, shaking hands, smiling for photographs, every inch the man of command. The sight struck Cole like an echo of gunfire. The Admiral's face hadn't changed much since Aleppo, still sharp, still confident, still utterly sure of himself. He turned away before their eyes could meet. The ceremony began with military precision. Hargrove's voice carried easily through the hangar without the need for a microphone. "Distinguished guests, honored veterans, ladies and gentlemen," he began, his tone polished and practiced. "Today we celebrate the courage of those who defend freedom where few dare to tread." The crowd applauded. Cole stood at the back, unmoving, his jaw set. Every phrase the Admiral spoke, valor, duty, sacrifice, felt like grit in his teeth. Then came the part that made his stomach tighten. "As we mark the 10th anniversary of Operation Ashfall," Hargrove said solemnly, "we remember those who gave their lives under my command to protect American lives and values abroad." Cole's breath caught, his hand curled into a fist. "Under my command." He looked down, focusing on the floor, on the boots of the sailors lined up near the wall. But even the hum of the air vents sounded like desert wind. He could almost hear the explosions again, the broken radio transmissions, the cry of a child hidden under rubble. When the Admiral paused for applause, Cole realized his nails had dug half-moons into his palm. Across the room, Commander Nate Calder noticed him. The man's eyes narrowed slightly, something like recognition flashing there. After the speeches, the orchestra began their performance. The sound of Maya's cello rose clear and haunting above the others, cutting through the noise of polite conversation. Even the officers turned to listen. For a few minutes, the hangar felt human again. When the last note faded, applause filled the space. Hargrove himself crossed the floor toward the students, his practiced smile back in place. "That was beautiful," the Admiral said, addressing Maya. "The cello solo, was that yours?" "Yes, sir," she replied shyly. "Thank you. You've got real talent. Your father must be proud." Cole, standing nearby, stepped forward. "I am," he said simply. Hargrove turned, sizing him up. "You served?" "A lifetime ago," Cole said evenly. "Really?" The Admiral's tone carried the faintest edge of mockery. "Most veterans are proud to show it. Pride takes different forms." The crowd around them began to quiet, sensing tension. A few officers exchanged looks. Hargrove smiled, that politician's smile that never reached the eyes. "What unit were you with? Does it matter?" "Just curious," Hargrove said, his voice rising a little, playing to his audience. "I've commanded a few in my time." Cole didn't move. The silence stretched. "Come now," the Admiral pressed, his tone deceptively light. "You look like a man who's seen action. What was your call sign?" A ripple of laughter passed through the onlookers. Maya's cheeks burned red. "Let's go, Dad," she whispered, tugging at his sleeve. But he didn't move. His gaze had gone distant, steady as a rifle sight. When he spoke, his voice was quiet, but carried through the hangar like a dropped pin. "Damascus wasn't quite as you described it." The laughter stopped instantly. The name hit the air like a live wire. Hargrove's face paled, though his smile stayed fixed. "And what would you know about classified operations?" Cole stepped forward. "I know what it's like to carry a brother through 20 meters of fire while command sits in an air-conditioned bunker, pretending the line's still open." Whispers rippled through the crowd. Calder froze, recognition flickering across his face. Hargrove's voice sharpened. "Who exactly do you think you are?" Cole's answer came like a blade drawn from a sheath. "You asked for my call sign, Admiral." He looked down at Maya briefly, then met Hargrove's eyes. "Iron Ghost." The room went dead still. Somewhere near the back, a veteran whispered, "Holy God, he's real." Every SEAL in the room straightened instinctively. Hargrove's jaw tightened. The mask of control slipped from his face as if someone had torn away his medals one by one. For the first time in a decade, Cole saw something he never thought he'd see again: fear in Victor Hargrove's eyes. And standing beside him, Maya realized she didn't know her father at all. For a long moment after those two words, Iron Ghost the hangar was completely still. The flags above the stage hung lifeless in the air, and even the low hum of machinery seemed to pause. It was as if time itself had inhaled and refused to exhale. Then, like a tide pulling back, whispers surged through the crowd. Cole stood unmoving. The weight of every stare pressed against him, but he didn't flinch. His daughter's hand trembled against his arm, her voice barely a whisper. "Dad, what's happening?" He didn't answer. His eyes were locked on Hargrove, whose smile had vanished completely. "That's impossible," the Admiral said finally, his voice strained. "Iron Ghost doesn't exist." "Then you should have nothing to worry about," Cole replied evenly. From somewhere near the front, Commander Nate Calder stepped forward, his expression a mix of shock and clarity. "Sir," he said to Hargrove, "Iron Ghost was the operative from the Damascus extraction Operation Ashfall, the one that disappeared." Hargrove shot him a glare sharp enough to cut glass. "Enough, Commander." But Calder didn't back down. "I read the redacted reports. There were inconsistencies even then." The Admiral turned back to Cole, his face tightening into a mask of command. "You're out of line, Bennett. Whatever fantasy you've built about your past," Cole's voice cut through him. "October 17th. The safe house was compromised. You ordered us to abort from your post in Qatar." Gasps rippled across the hangar. The precision of his words left no room for bluffing. "You disobeyed a direct order," Hargrove snapped, his voice cracking. "I refuse to abandon children to die in a basement," Cole said, his tone calm but unyielding. 4 hostages. 3 were kids. The crowd had turned completely. Even civilians could sense that something enormous had shifted beneath the surface. Calder's jaw tightened as realization settled in. "You stayed behind," he said quietly. Cole nodded once. 3 of my men didn't make it, and for 10 years you've told the world they died because I wouldn't follow orders." A murmur swept through the veterans in attendance. Hargrove's composure crumbled further with every pair of eyes that turned toward him. "You have no proof," he said, his voice trembling now. Cole reached into his pocket and drew out a small metal coin. Its surface gleamed in the light, etched with foreign letters. "Damascus Mint," he said, holding it up. "Given to me by the father of those children after we got them out." Calder stepped closer, studying the coin. "I've read about this," he murmured. A classified debrief mentioned one missing. He looked at Hargrove. "Admiral, this matches the description exactly." The Admiral's mouth opened, but no sound came. And then, something unexpected happened. Calder straightened to attention and gave a crisp salute to Cole. For a moment, no one moved. Then, one by one, other SEALs followed suit. Men in uniform, veterans, even a few civilians who had once served, all raised their hands in silent acknowledgement. Hargrove stood trapped among them, surrounded by the very code of honor he had betrayed. Reluctantly, almost mechanically, he lifted his hand in salute as well, the gesture hollow and heavy. Cole returned it once, precise and deliberate. Then he turned to his daughter. "Let's go." As he led Maya out, the path opened naturally before them. The silence that followed wasn't empty, it was reverent. Outside, the sunlight felt too bright after the dim hangar. Maya walked beside him, her steps small and uncertain. "You were really Iron Ghost?" she asked finally. "Once," he said. "A lifetime ago. Why didn't you ever tell me?" He stopped walking, looking out toward the sea beyond the base. "Because the man I used to be didn't belong in your world." She studied him for a moment, then shook her head. "You could have just said you were a hero." Cole's expression softened, though his eyes stayed distant. Heroes are just people who ran out of choices. They reached the van, but before he could open the door, a familiar voice called after him. "Mr. Bennett," Commander Calder approached, his expression unreadable. "Admiral Hargrove's people are already scrambling. There'll be an inquiry." "Let them have it," Cole said. Calder hesitated. "You understand what you did in there, right? Half the men in that room will be talking to Washington by morning. I didn't do it for them." "For who, then?" Cole glanced at Maya. "For her. So she never has to grow up thinking silence means weakness." Calder studied him a long moment, then extended his hand. For what it's worth, he said quietly, I think the truth was overdue. Cole shook his hand once, firmly. Be careful with it. Truth has a habit of burning whoever holds it. When he and Maya finally reached home that night, the harbor looked the same as it always had, boats rocking gently, lights winking across the dark water. But to Maya, nothing looked familiar anymore. She followed her father inside, watching the way he moved, the way the weight of years seemed to hang from his shoulders. At the kitchen table, he poured 2 cups of coffee and pushed one toward her. She didn't take it. What happens now? Nothing, he said. We go back to fixing boats. Back to life. That's it, after all that? He met her eyes. Peace doesn't come from the world admitting you were right. It comes from you not needing it to. Maya looked down, silent. Somewhere outside, a foghorn sounded low and distant over the Pacific. The sound lingered in the air, steady and mournful like the ghost of something finally finding its way home. The following morning, the town of Oceanside buzzed in a way Cole had never seen. Word spread faster than the tide. Someone had filmed the confrontation at the base. Within hours, the video was online. The quiet boat repairman who had silenced an admiral with 2 words. By noon, it had 1 million views. Cole ignored the phone that wouldn't stop ringing. He went about his work at the harbor, sanding down a deck, pretending not to notice the strangers who paused on the pier to take pictures of his shop. When Maya came home from school, her eyes were wide. Dad, everyone's talking about it. They say the Navy's investigating. He didn't look up from the toolbox. They can talk all they want. Commander Calder called the school, she continued. He said he's trying to reach you. Cole exhaled slowly, wiped his hands, and reached for the phone. When Calder answered, his voice was tense. You've caused quite a storm, Bennett. I didn't start it, Cole said. Hargrove did 10 years ago. There was a pause. The Office of the Inspector General and NCIS are opening a joint inquiry into Operation Ashfall. They want your statement. I already gave it in front of 200 people. They need it on record, Calder said. And Cole, black SUVs might show up before the day's over. Don't panic, they're mine. Cole chuckled without humor. I stopped panicking a long time ago. By late afternoon, the sound of tires crunching on gravel drew his attention. 3 vehicles had pulled into the boatyard, their black paint gleaming under the gray sky. The lead car door opened, and Calder stepped out, flanked by 2 men in dark suits. Cole set his wrench down and waited. Commander. Mr. Bennett, Calder said formally. These are Special Agent Kavanaugh, Naval Criminal Investigative Service, and Investigator Durand from the Inspector General's office. Kavanaugh extended a hand. We appreciate your cooperation. I didn't agree to cooperate, Cole said, but shook it anyway. We'd like to ask some questions about Operation Ashfall, Durand said, pulling out a notepad. Inside, if you don't mind. Cole led them into the small office behind the workshop. The place smelled of salt, oil, and coffee. Maya lingered at the doorway, her school bag still slung over one shoulder. It's okay, Cole told her. Go finish your homework. She nodded reluctantly, but stayed close enough to listen. Durand began. Your testimony at the ceremony contradicted official reports filed under Admiral Hargrove's command. You claimed the safe house was compromised prior to your arrival. Do you have evidence of that? The evidence was buried with my men, Cole replied. But the enemy knew our exact route before we got there. That doesn't happen by chance. Do you believe Admiral Hargrove leaked the coordinates? Kavanaugh asked. I believe someone did, and he's the only one who benefited from how it ended. Calder leaned forward. You mentioned 4 hostages. They survived? Cole nodded. A father and 3 kids, Syrian civilians. They were relocated under protection. Durand's pen stopped moving. You have contact with them? No, Cole said. Never have. That was part of the deal when I disappeared. The investigators exchanged a glance. Deal? They offered me 2 choices, Cole said. Face court-martial for insubordination or disappear under a sealed discharge. I had a 1-year-old daughter. I chose her. The room was silent for a moment except for the faint ticking of the harbor clock. Then Kavanaugh spoke. Admiral Hargrove has been placed on administrative leave pending review. There are rumors of falsified after-action reports across multiple missions. Cole's jaw tightened. Rumors are a polite word for truth that scares people. Outside, Maya peeked through the cracked door. She could see her father sitting straight-backed, answering every question with the calm precision of a man who'd lived every second of what he described. It was strange. watching him like that so different from the quiet mechanic she'd known all her life. When the questioning ended, Calder stood. "There will be a formal deposition next week. You'll receive notice." Cole nodded. "What happens to my daughter if I cooperate?" "Nothing changes," Kavanaugh assured him. "We're not here to disrupt your life, Mr. Bennett, just to correct the record." After they left, Maya came in. "You're not in trouble, are you?" "Not yet," he said, half smiling. That night, they ate in silence until the phone rang again. Cole almost didn't answer, but curiosity won. Elise's voice came through, low and urgent. "Turn on the news." He grabbed the remote. On the screen, a reporter stood outside the Pentagon, the wind snapping at his coat. "Breaking news tonight," the anchor said. "Admiral Victor Hargrove, commander of Naval Special Warfare Group 1, has been placed under federal investigation following allegations of misconduct and falsified reports linked to Operation Ashfall." Maya's eyes widened. "That's because of you." "Because of the truth," Cole corrected. The report continued. "Sources within the Department of Defense confirm that previously classified documents suggest command negligence and possible manipulation of intelligence data during the Damascus rescue mission. The investigation is being led by NCIS in coordination with the Inspector General." The image shifted to Hargrove, leaving a building surrounded by cameras. He kept his head down, the same man who once commanded rooms, now looking small beneath the weight of exposure. Maya turned to her father. "So, now what happens?" "Now he faces what we all do eventually, his own reflection." For the first time in years, Cole allowed himself to lean back and breathe. Not triumph, not satisfaction, just relief. The kind that came when ghosts finally had names. But even as calm settled over the room, headlights flashed outside. He stood, instincts waking instantly. Through the window, he saw 3 figures approaching the porchmen whose posture he recognized instantly. Shoulders squared, steps measured, eyes scanning the perimeter. "Dad?" Maya whispered. "Who are they?" Cole's voice dropped to a murmur. "Ghosts," he said quietly. "From Damascus." The knock at the door was firm but not threatening. He opened it slowly, and the years between then and now collapsed. The man in front, broad-shouldered, with a carbon fiber prosthetic leg visible beneath his jeans, smiled faintly. "Long time, Ghost." Cole exhaled. "Weston, they told me you didn't make it." "Nearly didn't," Weston said, tapping his leg. "Spent 8 months learning to walk again. Been looking for you ever since." Behind him stood Marcus Archer and Commander Calder. The air between them was heavy with history. "Can we come in?" Calder asked. Cole nodded, stepping aside. The door closed softly behind them, shutting out the sea wind and opening the past he had tried so hard to keep buried. The living room felt smaller than usual, the kind of space that held too much history for its walls. Cole stood near the window, arms crossed, while the 3 men who had once shared his foxhole settled into the quiet with the awkwardness of people who had cheated death together. Maya lingered in the doorway, curiosity and unease flickering across her face. Travis Weston leaned against the counter, his prosthetic leg catching the light. "You disappeared," he said finally. "No one knew where you went. After the debrief, they said you were done, off the grid. I didn't believe it." Cole's voice stayed even. "They made it clear I wasn't supposed to exist anymore." Marcus Archer, younger than the others but with the same tired eyes, placed a folded flag on the coffee table. "Riley's family wanted you to have this. They never stopped asking questions." Cole stared at it, his jaw tightening. He deserved better. "They all did," Weston said quietly. "That's why we're here. The investigation's moving fast. Calder's been pushing Washington to reopen every mission report Hargrove touched. Turns out Ashfall wasn't the only one he doctored." Cole looked to Calder. "You sure you want to go down that road? Men like Hargrove don't fall easy." Calder's expression hardened. "They do when the truth's stronger than their rank." He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folder thick with documents. "Preliminary findings. You need to see this." Cole hesitated before opening it. Inside were copies of communications logs, intercepted transmissions, and fragments of internal memos. One line caught his eye. "Intel warning extraction compromised prior to deployment. Proceed as planned." He read it twice, then looked up slowly. He knew. Calder nodded grimly. "Hargrove received a warning 12 hours before you deployed. He ignored it. They think he wanted the operation to fail just enough to justify additional funding for his expansion proposal." Maya gasped softly from the doorway. He gambled with your lives? More than that, Archer said. With ours, with those kids. He used us. Cole's hands tightened around the folder. For a long time, no one spoke. The only sound was the wind brushing against the glass, the muffled rhythm of the ocean beyond. Finally, Cole said, "Why tell me now?" "Because they're holding a private ceremony at the Pentagon," Calder said. 3 days from now. Classified attendance. The Secretary of the Navy himself wants to correct the record. The men we lost, Riley, Donovan, Kramer, they'll be honored properly, and you—" He paused, searching Cole's eyes. "You're on the list, too." "I don't need recognition," Cole said. "It's not about need," Weston countered. "It's about truth, about setting things right," Archer added softly. "Their families deserve to know who really brought those kids out." Cole's gaze drifted toward Maya. She sat quietly on the edge of the couch, her expression a storm of pride, confusion, and something like sorrow. "You should go," she said. He frowned. "You think so? You've carried this alone long enough. Mom wouldn't have wanted that." The mention of Sarah hit him like a quiet blade. For years, he had kept her memory behind locked doors, the brilliant intelligence analyst who had seen patterns no one else could. She had seen through him, too. "One day you'll have to face it, Cole," she'd told him once. "Silence can heal, but it can also rot." He exhaled, his shoulders sagging just a little. 3 days, huh? "Washington," Calder confirmed. "We'll handle transport and clearance. Maya's welcome too if she wants." Maya nodded before her father could protest. "I'm coming." After the others left, the house fell back into uneasy quiet. Cole sat at the table staring at the folded flag. "You don't have to go," Maya said gently. He shook his head. "If I don't, those names stay buried. Maybe it's time to let the light hit them." The next few days passed like a dream. The story dominated national news. A mysterious SEAL operative confronting a decorated admiral, whispers of corruption at the highest levels. Journalists camped outside the harbor. Cole kept his head down, finishing the Callahan boat as if work could keep the world from shifting under his feet. On the night before they left for Washington, Maya found him in the workshop, oil on his hands, fatigue in his eyes. "You're still not sleeping," she said. "Old habits," he replied. She set her cello beside his workbench. "I was thinking, maybe I could play something at the ceremony, for the men you lost." Cole turned, caught off guard. "You'd want to do that? They deserve it. And so do you." He stared at her for a moment, then smiled softly, the kind of smile that came from deep gratitude rather than happiness. "Your mom used to say music says the things words can't. Maybe she was right." Maya grinned faintly. She usually was. That night, after she went to bed, Cole stood on the porch watching the harbor lights flicker. The air smelled of salt and rain. Somewhere across the water, he could hear the distant echo of the Navy base, the faint hum of engines, the ghost of a life he had buried. He closed his eyes and let the memories come. The desert, the gunfire, Riley's last laugh, the weight of a child in his arms. When he opened them again, dawn was just beginning to rise over the water. For the first time in a decade, the horizon didn't look like an escape. It looked like a destination. 3 days later, Cole and Maya boarded a small military jet bound for Washington, D.C. From the window, she watched the Pacific shrink into a shimmer of light. Cole sat beside her, silent but peaceful. When she reached for his hand, he didn't pull away. "Dad," she said quietly, "are you ready for this?" He looked out the window, where the clouds stretched like endless white roads. "For the first time in 10 years, he said, "I think I am." And somewhere deep down, as the engines roared and the ground fell away, the man once called Iron Ghost felt the weight of his silence begin to lift like a long exhaled breath finally let go.